Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And welcome to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 116. Before we get to this week's episode and this week's guest, just wanted to thank everyone again for following along on social media, sharing this podcast with your friends. You know, I've been having some incredible phone conversations with people that love the Back of the Range. One of my all-time favorite messages came through earlier this week from a mom in Texas who listens to the Back of the Range while she's walking. She tells all of her junior golf parent friends all about the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. Just super cool stories like that make this whole thing worthwhile and fun. So thanks for that message earlier this week. Little housekeeping news to share with you. Last year, I did a Road to Hoylake series before the Walker Cup, where I highlighted 16 guys that were vying for a spot on the U.S. team. Had a lot of fun doing that, getting to know a lot of the great collegiate stars in the game today. Boy, it was a blast being at Hoylake. Having already spoken to the entire team, that made things that much better. In the next couple weeks, I will launch the Road to Augusta. There are 6 amateurs in the field at the Masters. I will introduce you to all of them, from the U.S. Amateur Champion Andy Ogletree to the Asia Pacific Amateur Champion Yushin Lin. You will get to know them all a little bit better, and that'll get us a little bit more excited for the Masters and for you to root for these amateurs as they compete at Augusta National. So keep an eye out. I will promote it heavily on our social media channels. It'll probably start in early March. Speaking of social media, you know the drill. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, on Instagram. Every episode's available on our website, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. To make it easy, go to thebackoftherange.com. Little mojo update. Boy, congrats to Pepperdine Men's Golf. Look out for these guys in the spring. Back-to-back team victories and individual victories. Absolutely incredible. Congrats to William Mao, who picked up his first career victory at the Amer Ari Invitational in Hawaii. He shot 64 in the final round to get into a playoff, won it in extra holes. William Mao was a guest during that Road to Hoylake series. If you haven't caught that episode, go check it out. First guest in the history of this podcast to grow up on an egg farm. Absolutely incredible story. And remember, Sahith Theegala won that previous tournament when he donned the Kobe jersey on the final hole. He was episode 101. Go get caught up on these episodes. Learn more about these guys. Texas finished runner-up in this tournament. Those guys are playing well. Oklahoma State did well. It's going to be an awesome spring, and I can't wait to get out to some of these tournaments in person. Let's get started with this week's episode because I feel that I might need a little more runway to introduce this guest. Our guest this week is Will Leitch, and he is not a golfer. Now, he will not argue that fact with me whatsoever, so don't feel that I'm picking on him. When I say he's not a golfer, I don't mean that he's a hacker, but, loves the game. I'm telling you, he doesn't play golf. So why is he on the Back of the Range Golf Podcast? Well, that's a very good question. I first learned about Will about 15 years ago when I came across this website called Deadspin. You see, before there was social media and memes and TikTok and Snapchat, there were blogs, and Deadspin was the most widely read sports blog in the country. Will was the founder of Deadspin. Again, why is he on here? Well, last year, Golf Magazine approached him to write about golf, and that turned into a little experiment. How would a non-golfer fare after spending a year with one of the top instructors in the state of Georgia? Will, of course, lives in Athens, Georgia. Well, we spoke about his journey in the game. We spoke about sports and golf movies and Joe Buck and why we hate certain commentators and his thoughts on just being a sports fan. And more importantly, why is it completely pointless and simultaneously such an important part of our daily existence? I had a great conversation with Will. He's written several books. He's hosted several podcasts, and he's just an interesting sports guy. So this might be a little bit of a palate cleanser, so to speak. This will get us recharged thinking about how we view golf, how we view our golf fandom, so to speak. I hope you find our conversation as entertaining as I did. So let's get started. Will, why are you here at the Back of the Range?
I am glad to be able to come on and finally educate your listeners about golf. It's time to listen to a true expert in this field who understands the game in both its macro and micro forms and can package it and hand it to your listeners the way that it needs to be packaged and handled.
All right. I don't know where to go with that, but let's see if we can move forward.
I know. I have no idea. I'm just being silly. Thank you. Thank you for letting me come on.
No, that's great. So since you are just a renowned expert in the game of golf and its histories and traditions and its players, what is your current handicap that you're carrying, Will?
Handicap. That's like the number of strokes that it's whatever it is. It's you know how when they teach you in early biology scientific notation,
yes,
or it's like 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd.
Yes.
That my handicap is so bad it requires that number of digits to be put in that sort of format.
Okay, so really we've uncovered a little bit of truth here, is that you really don't know what the hell you're talking about when it comes to golf. So what? Okay, perfect.
Nope.
All right, so why don't we maybe educate my listeners right now as to actually why the hell you're why are you on my golf podcast? We just recently spoke with a PGA Professional of the Year. We've spoken to Collegiate All-Americans. Why are you here? So Will, I know that you are author of 4 books, co-hosting 3 different sports podcasts, or 1 movie podcast, 2 sports podcasts. You have written for, MLB.com, Sports Illustrated, New York Magazine. I'm missing a bunch. What's the one that I'm missing that we got to put on your tagline so that people understand?
I was in the New York Times talking about Trump on Super Bowl Sunday, which
God.
Also was popular and made me beloved among a lot of people.
Well, the one thing we're missing is that you are one of the co-founders of Deadspin, which is how
I am the co-founder.
The
founder of Deadspin. Somehow, a Wikipedia thing got weird at some point. I would have loved to have had a co-founder in those early days. I would have been able to take more naps.
I understand.
But no, I am the actual founder.
The founder of Deadspin, and if you are old enough to know what Deadspin is, obviously this has perked your ears up saying, how is this guy talking golf? But you actually have a very interesting relationship with golf that you took under last year with Golf Magazine. They brought you in to learn the game of golf, and when this opportunity came your way, was it something that you approached them on, saying, I'd like to write about golf, I'm interested in golf, I want to give this a shot, and let's document this? How did that whole thing come to pass?
Yeah, so basically, Golf Magazine, as your listeners probably know, went through an ownership change about a year and a half ago, and they brought in kind of a new editorial team, and they were kind of looking for kind of fresh voices, kind of name writers, and after all of those people turned them down, they got quite desperate, and so they went to me and asked if I had any ideas for them, and I mentioned to them, I don't really play golf. For the record, I live in the South. I live in Athens, Georgia. And here it's a place where not playing golf, like if I tell someone I don't play golf, they're like, oh, so you forgot to bring your clubs? I'm like, no, right. I don't actually have clubs or actually play golf. So it's become like a bit of a bit of a handicap, I would say, living down here and not being a golfer. So I kind of told them I'm not really I don't really play golf. It's just I didn't grow up with the game, and I have all sorts of as I've learned mostly incorrect thoughts about class and so on about golf that are completely wrong, but were stuck in me in my grungy college days. Sure. And so, when I talked to them. So I'm like, I don't know what I could do if you want me to do like interviews with golfers to talk about their life off the links or so on. And but one thing I had is a year before I run a weekly newsletter on Substack, and I'd written a newsletter about how I didn't play golf and how I always felt kind of guilty about it, and how particularly this happened was difficult. And the Golfer's Journal, which I think probably a lot of your listeners know, it's a very good publication, had asked me to write about that. And it kind of got around, and they remembered reading that. And they said, well, you know what might be fun? Why don't you write about golf from like an idiot's perspective? And I'm like, well, I resent the fact that you just consider someone that doesn't play golf an idiot, but I understand where you're coming from. So what we decided to do was I said, listen, why don't you get me together? As I said, I live in Athens. Golf Magazine does its best golf coaches of the year issue every year.
Instructors,
And so why don't you find someone nearby, Georgia, and I will get together with this guy every month, and he will track my progress. He will try to coach me and turn me into a better golfer. And he will I will use this as a springboard to write a monthly column about the game and me being introduced to the game and me learning kind of larger issues about the game. So they thought it was a good idea if they could find someone who could possibly suffer me for on a monthly basis. So they found a man named John Tattersall, who is a golf instructor here in Atlanta. And he was very patient with me. And I knew he would be patient with me because he had previously been hired to work with Charles Barkley.
Oh, wow.
Okay. He can handle me.
Yeah.
He can handle Charles Barkley. So it really turned out to be a fun thing. And so I would meet with him. I ended up meeting him more than once a month, to where we started out with just basics of the game. But to me, what was fun about talking about with him is really talking about how so much of the game, not just the game has changed, but I think fans' connection to the game seems to have changed. We talked a lot about power and about how power has become such a large part of the sport, much to the chagrin of a lot of the fan base. And as someone that writes a lot about, for example, baseball, that connected with me quite a bit, because baseball is very much in this constant kind of generational struggle between why can't everything be like the Whitey Herzog 1980s Cardinals watch with all these home runs, and I hate the shift and so on. And I find it fascinating, just as someone that writes about all sports, to see when technology and kind of biomechanics changes a game faster than fans are ready for it to change. And I think that's something that to me, and you're more of an expert than I am, but it certainly seems like that's something that's happened to golf in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's definitely something. In fact, the USGA just came out with a distance report. They've been tracking just how distance has affected the game over the last, it's happened over the last 20, 30 years, and they're really trying to figure out a way to make this change or what to do about it, because, we can't get more land, or we're forced now to acquire more land to build larger golf courses for golf balls that travel farther. So before we talk about your actual journey and learning the game, I want to ask you a couple things about that year and what you found when you started, and then what you obviously your conclusions were actually at the end of the year. But we have to go back and start a little bit here. So, native of Mattoon, Illinois, which
but part of Illinois that's closer to Kentucky than Chicago. Very farm country, Illinois.
Of course. And now, while I'm fishing for a story here, but please explain how much was Burger King a part of your childhood in Mattoon?
It's funny that you're referring to the fact that Mattoon, Illinois has an original Burger King that has no connection to the national Burger King. A lot of people know this from law school, actually. A lot of people that went to law school, this is a case that's taught in copyright law, I found out.
Yeah.
Because the Burger King in Mattoon, Illinois existed before the Burger King franchise. And so they had this big court case because the Burger King franchise did not know about this little hamlet Burger King in Mattoon. So they tried to sue our Burger King out of existence. And not only did they lose, our Burger King, in fact, there could be no national Burger King chain within an hour radius of Mattoon. So growing up, I had no idea what actual Burger King was.
Right.
I had no idea what the Whopper was. I had nothing, because we didn't have any of that stuff. We just had our local little greasy grill with the Burger King. So yeah. So it is funny that is the thing. As I've gotten older and I've met more and more lawyers in my life, that is the thing that they all know about Mattoon, Illinois, is that it is home of the original and still only Burger King. And so growing up, I didn't know any better, so I just thought that was the only Burger King in the world, and it turned out it was not.
So how did you, you went to Illinois, and obviously you've been writing well before you went to college, well before you got your first paid gig, but we don't have enough time to go through all your history of all the places that you've been, started writing. But I, got to ask you about Deadspin. Just an incredible website, and really, we could say, did Deadspin birth the social media sports landscape as it is today? We can go into several different directions there, but where did Deadspin start?
So Deadspin happened in 2005, and it was inspired by two things. One, when I went to the University of Illinois, I had I covered the Illinois basketball team and football team because I'm a sports fan. I like sports, and for a small town kid, to me, the idea of covering the big time college basketball and college football seemed like the coolest job in the world, and you would just walk around the world giddy that you had such an opportunity.
Right.
And then I went up to the press box, saw that was not what press boxes were like. Everybody hated it, and everyone was miserable all the time. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to write about sports. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I know I'm not going to do that. So on the second hand, I spent 5 years in New York City. I moved there in January of 2000 and starved for about 5 years. So I started a site called The Black Table with some friends of mine, and I wrote a lot for that. And people kind of like saw my work. And so Gawker Media, think of Gawker Media before it was Hulk Hogan ate it, or Hulk Hogan and Peter Thiel,
Right.
more specifically ate it. But they were thriving at the time, and they saw my work and liked it and asked if I wanted to do some work for them. And I realized, you know what they needed to do? They needed a sports site, because I wanted to, hearkening back to that time in Champaign, I realized that the people that were covering sport, to me, seemed like age-wise so different than not just the athletes they were covering, but the fans that were actually a part of this. There seemed like this massive disconnect between the people that worked in sports, whether they were media or players or coaches or league executives or everyone kind of involved. There was this massive disconnect, the way that their sports world was and the way that the fans actually talked about sports and experienced sports. And, the fans pay for all of this. So I kind of thought it would be fun to do a site that talked about sports the way that fans talked about sports and got rid of that weird divide that existed between them. And so they said, you're cheap, give it a shot. You got a couple months.
Yeah.
and that site became Deadspin, and it blew up much faster than I was prepared for it to. But it was, to me, so much of the site was based in that kind of idea. And frankly, so much of my writing now is still based on that idea that I want to make sure sports is still fun to experience, to write about. Tomorrow night, I'm going to watch Illinois play Maryland in college basketball, my Illini, and I am not going to be a journalist. I'm not going to be a impartial observer of an athletic experience. I'm going to be losing my mind. I'm going to be fascinated with the whole thing. And to me, I wanted to make sure that if I was going to combine two things that I deeply love, writing and sports, it would have to be something that I deeply enjoyed and was able to find joy out of. And so for me, that's what Deadspin was about, was kind of recapturing the joy of sports in a way that hopefully it seemed to catch on with people.
Well, and the other thing about Deadspin that I thought was so interesting is, it brought in almost crowdsourcing before crowdsourcing was kind of a word. You had your commenters on this blog, and you couldn't just, like today, you can just pop into anyone's Twitter feed and just unleash all sorts of, vitriol and hatred and just off the wall comments. But to be a commenter on this site, you actually had to submit an email or I don't really remember exactly how that happened. I got my commenter rights, and what was the greatest thing is all the commenters had these just ridiculous names. Mine, of course, was the well-known second-string catcher of the Atlanta Braves in the 80s, Biff Pocoroba, because that's just a great name. But you had all these people that contributed more to it. How did that idea come to be, and how did you realize that, okay, the fans are not only reading and consuming the content, but they're actually, with their creativity and their humor, they're helping build the site as it...
as with all the insights and innovations with Deadspin, I completely backed into it accidentally.
Oh, okay, perfect. I want to hear it.
Which is to say that the site for the first, I think, month and a half or 2 months did not have comments at all. And it became clear that they were going to have them because it was becoming, they should have had them, and I get it. But I'm a control freak about everything, particularly with Deadspin, because I was 30 years old when Deadspin launched, and I had been struggling for a while. Deadspin, it was very clear to me Deadspin was going to be kind of my big break. I needed to make sure that this was if my career was going to work out, I needed this to work out.
Right.
So I held on as tight as I could. And so I was very wary of having commenters. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll have commenters, but I am going to personally select every single person that comments on this page. So I literally put up a post on the site saying, if you'd like to be a commenter on this site, write me an essay, write me a short essay about why you are funny and why you will have something to contribute to the site. And it's funny to think of now because I actually went back and looked at a lot of these emails the other day. Some of the people on there, like Drew McGarry, like emailed me from his advertising job in like late 2005, being like, I have a terrible advertising job and no one to talk about sports with. Please let me comment on your site.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. And it was great because what happened is this community of very smart, individually selected people all started talking intelligently and amusingly to each other. And to be honest, I was paying it no attention because I was so busy writing the things above the comments.
Right.
And so, but I think that initial decision to not just let any old idiot off the street. I had seen what happened on any random Yahoo page where like you put up on Yahoo, you could put up a picture of like a cute puppy, and by like comment 5 was first. And comment 11 was how Obama was a Muslim. And comment 22 was about how Bush had taken down the World Trade Center. And I was like, okay, my site is not doing that. We're having nothing to do with that. You're going to have to personally comment. And I was not thinking like, I'm going to try to create a community that people will be invested in. I just wanted to have a comment section I would not personally be embarrassed of. And so I personally selected the people, and then it grew, and then it kind of self-sustained. It became very organic. I started putting people that I trusted, like Drew, like Matt Ufford, who was a big part of it at that time as well. I put them in charge of the comment thing, which just made it go bigger and bigger and bigger. And then then the commenters, the really good commenters like Drew, started showing up above the comments and writing columns for the site. And then it became, but I think it was all of the same idea that I don't think people came to Deadspin ever to be like, wow, this is it was never a hot take site. Like, I don't think anyone had this idea like, wow, look at the big sports news of the day. Let's see what Will Leitch has to say about it. Like, the whole point of the site is I'm an idiot, you're an idiot. Nobody knows any better than anybody else. If any media person acts like they do, they are feeding you a line. And so the whole idea of we're all in this together, none of us really knows anything, this is all just supposed to be fun, that was what I hoped the whole site was enthused with, and I was glad that people caught on to that and wanted to be a part of it.
If you could look back at one, and I know this is really challenging to do, or maybe it's not, but if you could look back on maybe one of the stories or one of the things that could possibly define Deadspin in the glory days of when it was just, man, this is just so much fun. Like, I know you were going blind trying to write everything all the time, but like, if you just look at something, if someone off the street wants you to explain, okay, what's one of the fun weeks you had at Deadspin? What's one of the fun things that you can hang your hat on and say, yep, that was us. That's part of the sports journalism lexicon that we have a little bit of a piece of that I'm kind of proud of.
Well, there's a lot of things that kind of jumped out a little bit. For me, I liked it when the site, obviously when you covered stories that a lot of people were afraid to cover at the time. Originally the site was going to be called The Ballad of Ron Mexico, because this is back even before the dogfighting thing of with Michael Vick, where he had been treated for a contagious disease, we'll say, but in order, court filings had come out in the smoking gun, where he used the name Ron Mexico as an alias, so he would stay out of the press, which I just found not only hilarious, but I also found it amazing that the week, I think the second week after the site launched, Sports Illustrated had a cover story on Vic, and ESPN had done this long feature on him. This story had been every sports fan I knew was talking about Ron Mexico and how funny this was, and they didn't mention it. They didn't even mention it once. I was like, okay, obviously, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, the thing that people are talking about are the regular, the traditional kind of way that these things are covered they're not talking about these things. And so for me, that was, so you're always going to be covering things that sometimes, push the line, push the limits, but I never wanted it to be a site where at the end of the day, people are like, ugh, I feel so gross. Like, the way you do when you're on Twitter all day now.
Right.
Like, I never wanted people to feel that way after they were on Deadspin all day. So I tried to keep kind of a cheerful attitude. I said, I'm a dopey Midwesterner. Like, I tried to keep it like a positive place. Even when sometimes you were writing about some unpleasant things, I tried to keep it generally a positive place. And while still you could get down in the muck and have some fun. And so to me, one of the most fun days, my old colleague, my associate editor, Rick Chandler, the late Rick Chandler died last year. And Rick, there was when, if you remember, what was the Barbaro? Remember the horse Barbaro?
Oh, yeah.
And
that was the best.
Yeah, Barbaro. And very sad. Listen, I like horses. No one likes to see a dead horse. The horses are dead. But so remember Barbaro, he won the race and then he fell and he had to be, because it was very sad. Like no one was making fun of the horse. But the funny thing about it was someone had put up a page before he'd actually died, when he was still like mending, or I guess horses don't mend, they just hadn't kicked it. And they were trying to I guess fix him, whatever you do to horses, I'm not a vet. But they people were writing letters to Barbaro.
Right. Yeah.
Something about that just struck me and Rick as the funniest thing in the world, that not only would people have this connection to an animal that is really just doing this for carrots,
and the horse doesn't know how to read. Let's just say that this horse does not know how to read.
Does not know how to read. They're sitting. These letters will not be read. They will not be read to the horse. If they were read to the horse would not understand them. There was something charmingly sincere, but also like very funny about like these people who were writing these poems and all of these things to Barbara, and it became like a thing that Deadspin had like a lot of fun with. But to me, that was the ideal Deadspin story, because it was something that I thought that you get, because really what it was based in is you would have these like soft focused stories about the tragedy of Barbara. And listen, it is sad, but it is also, I mean, there are thousands of horses every day that didn't just win a race on television for you, that died, and no one seems to be mourning them very much. There seems something very kind of silly about the way that people were kind of reacting to it, and I think the way that like ESPN would react to it, and kind of like a lot of people reacted to it. So it became a perfect Deadspin story because it could kind of mock that trope, that soft focus kind of trope, but also it was hilarious, and it was sincere, but it was also harmless. Like no one was getting hurt, no one was being like, the only thing you were lightly, gently mocking very kind-hearted, overly earnest people in a way that I felt was warm-hearted as well. And so to me, I always considered that the kind of signature Deadspin story of that time. I think the biggest Deadspin story of all time happened right after I left, which was probably the Manti Te'o story, which of course we all know Manti Te'o, the Notre Dame football player with the fake girlfriend, that was broken by Deadspin. It was after that was when Tommy Craggs was running the site. It was broken after my time, but I think that was the time where you realized Deadspin had gone from something that was fun and kind of but small. It went from like the cool Brooklyn indie band to playing after that story broke.
Yeah. I always remember You're With Me, Leather. I always remember Chris Berman.
That was a fun one too. Yeah. I definitely recommend people go check out the Wikipedia page for that. It's still, there's a lot of fun stuff on that one.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about a little bit of present day. You obviously you're a huge St. Louis Cardinals fan. I actually had Joe Buck on episode 25 when I was first getting started. In fact, man, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and then that was kind of jumping into the fire. You don't want to, look like too much of an idiot when you're talking to a guy that's called the World Series and the U.S. Open and the Super Bowl. And
was that when people were still yelling at him for doing his first golf stuff?
They're still yelling at Joe Buck, and actually, it was.
Okay, they are.
I mean, and what was really interesting is during that episode, it was actually comforting to hear him say, "Look, I know people don't like some of my shit, and I'm okay with that. And I do what I think is my best take. I'm not they call me a homer, at all times when I'm calling a World Series game that the Cardinals are playing in. It's like, no, I'm calling the World Series, but I just think it's hysterical how he's very self-aware of what his perception is, and how he calls sports. And obviously they think he's bland, but golf's bland, and he's probably a good fit, but why do we care so much about the guy calling our sports? I mean, can't we just watch it and just take the play-by-play, we'll get what we get? I mean, why is it so damn important?
I don't know. We like to. I always think of something. The late baseball umpire Ron Luciano wrote a series of great books in the '80s, and he always joked. He had this joke about how they asked him if they would ever be robot umpires, if they would ever have a machine that would call balls and strikes or call outs. And he said, if they find a machine that calls balls and strikes, the players, when it makes a call that goes against them, will beat it to death with the bat. Because we want when sports. One of the things I love about sports is it gets out emotions that are otherwise unacceptable in daily life. If when I think of things that make me jump up and just start screaming, it's basically sports and like a spider,
Right.
So like for me, sports, if you were to meet me in regular everyday life, I mean, I talk fast clearly, but other than that, I'm like a pretty regular guy. Like I don't get too excited. I don't get too angry. I don't get too sad. I'm a regular measured Midwestern dude. But when I'm watching a sporting event, I'm a lunatic. And to me, that's what sports is for. And so sports is for basically it's sometimes it can go too far in this direction, but generally speaking, it's a place where you can kind of have a safe sort of tribalism, and you can sit next to someone with whom you have absolutely nothing in common, emotionally, personally, politically, across the board. But if you are rooting for the same team as them, you're best friends. And you guys could scream like crazy the entire time. And so broadcasters, just like referees, are kind of there to be yelled at. It's funny. One of the things that's kind of interesting, I always think of college basketball, when Billy Packer used to call the Final Four, and when Joe Morgan used to call the baseball game.
Yes.
They were the most hated guys. People despised them. So then they left, and they were replaced with the most boring people in the world, and the games just aren't as much fun. Like, I do think there is value in having, in the same way that, like, I feel like this as a media member, I feel like this is part of the job as the press. I actually feel like it's part of our social utility that the press provides. It's for people to get out their frustrations and anger with. We're the refs you yell at. That's kind of what broadcasters are. So I feel like, Joe Buck, I actually like Joe Buck. I know Joe Buck. I think he is a funny person. I think he has an excellent perspective on his place in the sports universe. And that is not something that, particularly with people of that high profile of a job, that's not something they usually have. Bob Costas does not have that. Bob Costas believes that when he's on like broadcast, he's like the voice of God and you should listen to me. Joe Buck does not do that. Joe Buck is like, I broadcast baseball games and I'm kind of a dork. And I know you all think I suck, and that's okay. And I feel like that is correct, but it is also, I think, the a very healthy attitude for someone in his position to have.
Yeah. That's well said, because I kind of feel the same way. I think we would, obviously you're probably aware that CBS got rid of Gary McCord, and they got rid of a couple other, I'm trying to remember who they got rid of. They got rid of McCord, and obviously don't have Faraday anymore. And obviously McCord was removed from the Masters broadcast because I'm pretty sure you're aware of this, but back in the 80s, he referred to the greens at Augusta National as being bikini waxed, that they were so fast. Yeah. And he was never brought back there. But I agree. I think there should be more personality in the way golf is called. Obviously, there's the way to respect the game and all that fun stuff that you have to keep in mind. But let's talk a little bit about your journey in golf. So you start with these lessons with John Tattersall, and you start writing these columns. Did you get to a point where you actually started to enjoy the game of golf?
I started to respect it more.
Okay.
I don't think the game is for me. And I don't say that because that's not a problem with the game. That's a problem with me. I am, as you can clearly tell listening to this, I'm not a laid back person. Like I'm an active person. Like I talk fast. I think fast. I write fast. I actually feel like I'm talking at normal speed. It's just the rest of you are listening too slowly.
There you go.
But I think that golf requires a patience and a long-term commitment that I am unable to give it. But what it has done, doing those lessons, and then, because what we kind of did is we did all these lessons. I went to the BMW Championships with him in suburban Chicago. I played at the course where at the Country Club of the South in suburban Atlanta, which I discovered when I was there is the place where Lisa Left Eye Lopez burnt down Andre Rison's house back in the 90s. I discovered that.
Fun fact.
Yeah, part of my journey. But so I got a little bit better. But the thing about getting a little bit better at golf is it doesn't matter if you're like, okay, I'm just going to get a lot better, or I'm going to like really focus on this. And it really made me appreciate it. One of the things that we did after he did all of this, and I finally went and played a half round with him, and bless his heart, like he was so patient with me in a way that he should not have been, because he spent a lot of time teaching me things. and then watched me go in the course and not do any of the things that he had taught me. But then to go out and play with friends of mine here in Athens. I play at the Athens Country Club with friends of mine that read the Golf Magazine column every month and enjoyed it. And we wanted to close the year journey by actually playing with him. And one of the things that really kind of blew me away, these guys are, they're duffers. They play. They're members of the country club, so they play pretty regularly. But they're not tour pro. They're not local pros. They don't play any programs. They have an easier recollection of their handicap than I do when asked. But otherwise, they're not. They're casual golfers. They do it for the reason that everybody does it, to just get away for a little bit and get some peace and quiet and drink a couple beers and chill out. And playing with them, I have to tell you, watching them play, they are so good. Not to be fair, they're so good just compared to me, but it gave me a larger appreciation. To me, this is where the journey ultimately landed, was to realize that you, reader, and you, listener, that you get out there and you get frustrated, and you hook it here, and you had a bad round here, and you get frustrated. Just know that to the average person, what you are doing is magic. Like, it is magic. A guy that's like, apparently, according to the rules of golf and the way you score it, is not actually very good at golf, is able to hit that ball just goes flying straight, and he's able to pitch and putt and do all of these things that I am horrible at and really only kind of understand. To me, speaks to, I had a professional coach go into detail with me on so many things, and I practiced and I tried to get better, and I would watch these guys and they were just so good, and they're not good.
Right.
And to me, that is what I really grew to appreciate, is that guy that I got plenty of friends. I live in Athens, Georgia. I got plenty of friends that go golfing, but that guy that just golfs every once in a while, and just to get away from his family or get away from her family, or just to get out for a little bit and chill out a little bit. They probably aren't worried about their score. They'll take a free shot here or there. No big deal. We're all just having fun. They're so good. And I feel like that is not appreciated by someone that just plays golf every once in a while, but loves the game and has put in enough time to improve at it. You are, to someone that doesn't play and is not dedicated to the game, it is what they do just blows me away. There's a guy one of the guys I played with at the Athens Country Club. His son is in my 8-year-old's class at school, and he's just a regular everyday golfer. But every single time I see him now, I'm like, oh my God, there goes that awesome golfer.
Right.
And he's not. He's just a regular guy. But I think so. That's something that I think everyone should keep in mind. What they do is really, really impressive, even if it doesn't feel that way.
All right. So if you got knocked on your ass by playing with your local buddies and the hackers around the club, what was it like when you were at that PGA Tour event and you're seeing the best in the world? Did you feel like you were just like on a foreign planet?
Well, no, to me, the thing that kind of blew me away by that was how, I've covered Super Bowls, I've been to the Olympics, I've been to the World Series, I've covered the Final Four, I've been to, you name a massive sporting event, and I've covered it. And, but that was the first time I'd gone to, it's not a major, but it's a championship. That's a big deal. Yeah. That's a big tournament. And the closeness that you have to the actual players, really, like, I tripped Jim Furyk. I didn't mean to. I didn't even know it was Jim Furyk. I had to look him up on Wikipedia after. I was like, holy cow, that was Jim Furyk. That guy's good. He was very nice about it. Yeah. But it's, to me, I don't even think he was playing. I don't know if he was playing, or I don't know what he was. But the point is that, like, if I go to cover, never minding the Super Bowl, but if I go cover an exhibition game between the Patriots and the Lions in mid-August that no one's there, I'm not coming within 300 yards of Tom Brady.
Right.
But if I go to a golf game, they're all right there, and not just right there to where I can accidentally trip them, but right there, they are right on top of me. Every single shot that I put together, that I do, there's everyone staring at me, never minding all the cameras. but everyone's right on top of me. And I had never realized that until I was there, how much everyone is just right on top of you as you're swinging. And I didn't really understand. And one of the things I talked with John Tattersall about was, he got me in a while. We'd go in the driving range, and he's part of a Fusion ATL, which is the name of his coaching clinic and coaching company. They have one of those incredible biometric things where they put all these cords on me and I can whack balls at night. It's really incredible. I got a lot better at that. And then I got in the driving range. I was doing really well. And I was like, wow, golf is easy. I got this thing licked. What's everybody talking about? And then the minute I got on the actual course and he was looking at me and the actual shots counted, I was like, oh my God, golf is really hard. And I messed up every shot and I completely freaked out. And so it makes you realize that I have always thought of golf as this intensely personal, almost private game. And it totally isn't. And that is one of my major misconceptions I had about the game that I understand now, and has developed me a much larger respect for people that do it, not just on the highest level, but even on the basic level, to go out with your friends and have them looking at you when you take a shot and have them give you crap when you mess it up. I mean, it's an entirely different experience. You have so many things you have to keep in mind when you're doing a shot. You have to keep consistent. You have to, all these things that John taught me. And the minute he was looking at me and the score counted, I forgot all of them. And to me, it's really kind of a remarkable thing that I did not understand.
Now, when you were there, did you, I'm sure as a writer, the ideas are kind of constantly percolating in your brain about, there's this angle, there's that angle. Did you think of just an interesting article or a perspective about maybe how you would change the fan experience for a PGA Tour event, or how you would change the broadcast of a PGA Tour event that would be more suitable to the layman or the casual fan, or someone that's just clicking through the channels and like, oh, here's golf. Let me see what this is for about 15 minutes. Did you have any ideas that came to your mind after being around the game and around the PGA Tour, even for just that one afternoon?
I do think that you don't get a sense when you watch on television. I've watched golf on television. I see them walk through the crowds, but it always feels like the crowd always feels like extras. They're like, they're the people in the background of the shot as Tiger Woods goes to sign his card and so on. But they're not. And there's something artificial about the way that, to me, that golf is covered on television. It doesn't feel personal. It's too big. The scope is too large. They're almost, and I get it. You want to watch where the ball goes a long way, and you want to be able to get the scope of where it's going, where it is. But to me, what's so much more interesting is that point of contact and what it's like to have. I feel like there should be more. And I understand so much of golf is focused on the players. The players don't want to think about the fans. The fans have to be quiet. I understand that. But I feel like you can get a better idea of what it's actually like, not only to be there, but what it feels like to actually hit the ball with all those people on top of you. I feel like it needs more of a cinema verite vibe than it feels. Honestly, when I'm watching a golf event, I feel like it's not all that different than watching someone play Golden Tee.
Okay, and I know what you're just talking about the visual interpretation. It's just the way it's
of the game.
They seem like they're protected out there.
Yeah, they do, and they're not. And that's something I did not realize until I was actually there. That I don't know if that would liven it up. I'm sure the players would hate it, but I do think there is something to the idea of getting across the drama of when you're watching a guy hit a golf ball, there's just one guy and you're looking at him be that one guy. But there are people everywhere, and he had to walk through all of them. She had to walk through all of them to get to the ball. And I just feel like that does get lost a little bit in a way that if you could somehow convey that in a dramatic kind of urgent way, I think it would I would find it a little bit more riveting, because it would get across a way, not just the human drama of it. I think, now when you watch someone, it feels like the story is man versus self or woman versus self. Right. But for me, what's much more fascinating is they're not there by themselves, and they're not, there's someone, not only are the fans watching, but they've got a partner that they're going with all day. And it just feels like the actual, it feels like golf is televised as a series of individual shots rather than a journey that lasts all day. And I personally feel like the journey that lasts all day is kind of a more compelling story.
Interesting. Yeah, there's just so many golfers out there, and actually, it's one of those. I think I've spoken to other people in golf media where it's one of those rare sports where, well, maybe it's the only sport. There's other sports have just one ball, and we have to focus. Golf has to focus on multiple players, multiple golf balls, so it has to be more of a story with all different, cutting from this hole to that hole. But no, I totally agree. It'd be nice to get a little bit closer. What we're talking. Okay, so we're talking about the players. Let me ask you this one about just sports. Today's athletes, whether it's golf or baseball, do they owe the fans more? Do you feel that the relationship with athletes and fans is in a good spot? Do they need to get closer? Are they getting too close with social media? How do you feel about the relationship of fans and athletes?
It's funny. I'm doing a cover story for New York Magazine on Kevin Durant. And I just last week, before the Super Bowl, I was in New York and I was actually interviewing Durant in his, perhaps not so unsurprisingly, beautiful high-rise apartment in Chelsea, New York. And he talked a lot about almost the obligations that you have now as that level of athlete to show more of yourself, and in a way that not only lets the fans see more of it, benefits you professionally, makes your on-court life easier. We were kind of contrasting a little bit between like him and say Michael Jordan, where Michael Jordan could, and I think Tiger Woods for a long time, could be this vague, generic, all things to all people. And that's just impossible. Now you can't be that. People demand more. And if you don't give them more, they think that you're a jerk. and I have to say, as a private person myself, like I'm talking to you now, we're having fun. But like, I'm not gonna open up my soul to you. I feel like my professional life and my private life are mostly separate, and I would feel very uncomfortable with that. But that's not really an option now for a lot of athletes, particularly on the scale of a Kevin Durant. And I find it funny. We had talked about 3 or 4 days after Kobe Bryant had died. And one of the things he talked about was like, after Kobe retired, it felt like he finally figured out who he was a little bit and figured out that, and he could show people that in a way that was more comfortable for him. And he said, that's something that I'm working on, something I'm trying to get better at. And I do feel like it's a lot, man. Like it's a lot for athletes, particularly when they're so young. Like I'm 44 years old and I'm not even close to figuring this out. I can't imagine how hard it is for like a 20-year-old with millions of people desperately reacting to every like that you give on Instagram.
Yeah.
So, it's hard. It's different. It's something that's changed a lot in the last decade. I do think fans have an unhealthy attitude about athletes. But to be honest, I think we have an unhealthy attitude about all of this. That is part of the fun. Like, for crying out loud, this does not actually matter. Watching who wins the Masters does not actually affect my life at all, except it totally does when I'm watching it, right? Like that, like to me, like I said, I'm going to watch this. My Illini are in first place in college and in the Big Ten right now, and they're going to play Maryland on Friday night, and I'm going to lose my mind at that game. Now, if you take a step back from it, I am a 44-year-old man yelling at 19 and 20-year-olds running around in their pajamas for 2 hours for my amusement, and my happiness level is almost entirely determined by how an arbitrary score ends up at the end of the game. It's irrational. It's insane. It is emotional. I've always joked that one of the dumbest things I've tried to do in my career is try to attach logic and rationality to a field where it is by nature rejected. And so for me, we do have an unhealthy relationship with our athletes, but we have an unhealthy relationship with sports, because if we had a healthy relationship with sports, we probably would only pay passing attention to it. But we don't, because they're awesome, and therefore we get emotionally invested. And as I said, kind of get a lot of unhealthy emotions out through something that really ultimately doesn't matter that much, which I guess that's maybe the most healthy thing about it.
Yeah,
but no, that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, and like another thing about like with Tiger, like Tiger's been through so much in different scandals and different and a lot of players have been through that. Whether I mean, we can go down the list, not just in golf but in other sports as well. And when people ask me about Tiger, I'm like, I don't know Tiger. I'm never probably going to know Tiger. I may interview him one day, but I don't think we're going to be friends. I only know Tiger by the fact that he's one of the greatest golfers of all time. So I can appreciate what he does in his profession on the course or on the court or on the diamond or on the gridiron, wherever you want to call it. I can just enjoy it in that little capsule. I don't base it on what kind of a person they are, because you don't know what kind of person they are. But I also find it just fascinating that people look at that and that's how they determine who they're going to root for.
Yeah, and to me, it's ultimately okay, right? Like, I feel like it's ultimately okay. And, I think about, you'd think we would have learned this lesson in a lot of ways, over and over and over, the idea, I have kids now, and I want them to love sports because it's something that we can do together and it's something we care about. It's something you can be connected with. I have season tickets to Georgia basketball and Georgia football here, and my kids' school is right across from the athletic facility. So sports is something they're connected to here, but I don't want them the Kirby Smart is not their hero. Jake Fromm was not their hero,
right.
And Anthony Edwards is not their hero. They are people that they can cheer for wholeheartedly, because I really feel like your fandom is yours. I always think this is what really frustrates me as a St. Louis Cardinals fan. I feel like the ownership group of the Cardinals believe that the reason the Cardinals are successful is because of them. And that's not true. They are temporary stewards of what I would argue is a public trust. In 60 years, I'll probably be dead in 60 years, 40 years. No one, probably dead in 40, but whatever, let's call it 40. In 40 years, the owners are probably not going to be there anymore. The players aren't going to be caring about the Cardinals anymore. The manager's not going to be there. They could be in a different stadium entirely. Everything could be different about that place, except for me. I'm still there, and the Cardinals fans are still there. And I feel like when people work at this, comes back to working in sports thing. When people work in sports, I feel like they think that they are actually the ones that make all of this, and they're not. And so I argue that if you're a fan of a team, this came up a lot. This comes up a lot when, for example, in baseball, if you're a Yankees fan, how can you cheer for Aroldis Chapman? If you're an Astros fan, how can you cheer for Roberto Osuna? If you're a Chiefs fan, how do you cheer for Tyreek Hill? And some people who have been involved in some bad stuff. Or, if you're owners, if you're a Patriots fan, how can you be involved with Bob Kraft?
Right.
All sorts of the things involved with that. And to me, you're not rooting for Bob Kraft, and you're not rooting for Tyreek Hill, and you're not rooting for Aroldis Chapman. You are rooting for this thing that you have created called the Yankees that makes your life happier when they win and when it makes you unhappy when they lose. Because logically speaking, you're rooting for a corporation, but you're not. You're rooting for this thing that means something to you that you have created. And so to me, that's the healthiest attitude. That's why I kind of try to get across to my kids. Root for Georgia. It's cool if you, but we don't get autographs. We don't do autographs. We try not to worship the athletes or hate the athletes on the other team. We're rooting for our team to be, when we're rooting for our team to win, what we're really rooting for is for us to have a brief flush of endorphins of happiness in a world that can otherwise be quite cruel. So for me, that's what sports provides. And I feel like that's the best attitude to have about when you're watching it.
So your kids aren't going to be able to score an autograph when dad's interviewing some big star, their favorite player. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, we don't do autographs around here.
What kind of a dad are you? I mean, get out of here with that. You're not even, nothing. No.
There is no way I lose respect more for a journalist than when they take a selfie with whoever they're interviewing. Oh. You are there to do they are not better than you. They are not worse than you. They are there to do a job just like you are doing a job. And I feel like any sort of journalist that what I think a bane of journalism of any kind of journalism, I think sports journalism and entertainment journalism both have this problem. This kind of obsession with celebrity and the idea that it was funny when I left Durant the other day. He's like, "You want a picture?" And I was like, "No." Are people always asking you for pictures when they're done with interviews with you? And he's like, yeah, I just assumed you did. I was like, you're dealing with a bunch of crappy journalists. And because I mean, that's not that my job is to interview him and tell his story and my interpretation of that story, how it gets into the large universe as I understand.
Hey, what was his reaction when you said that? I was just curious.
He laughed. I think I don't think he was. I don't know if he cared enough to respect me anymore.
but it gave him pause. But it gave him pause.
It did give him pause, and it bothered me that it gave him pause because to me, my job by interviewing him or doing an interview for a big story like that is not to say, "Hey guys, look who I interviewed. Check out my Instagram stories. I'm with KD." Like, to me, I lose credibility as someone telling the story. It becomes something that I'm selling. It becomes something that I'm peddling. I'm there to tell the story. If I tell the story correctly, hopefully people will like it and they'll click on it and they'll buy it. But to me, it's artificial otherwise. This is why it harks back to Deadspin. Like in the early days of the entire time I did Deadspin, I specifically requested never to be told how much traffic any story was getting or how much the site was getting. I said, listen, if we're not getting enough hits, we'll just stop it.
Right.
But like, don't make me like go like, oh, what's going to be a big traffic story for us today?
Right.
And obviously I lost that battle.
I was just going to say, like, yeah,
that's the way the world works.
Yeah.
But honestly, I say this all the time, but like, to me, this is why, like, I talked about how bad Twitter is. For me, like, Twitter is actually an incredible communication device. If I have a thought, I can type it into a box and hit send, and everyone in the world can see it in a half a second. Like, what an incredible device. The problem is we've attached numbers to it, and it's like, oh, how many people liked it? How many people saw it? How did I do? Did I do okay? And it's turned what should just be an incredible communications device into like a dick measuring contest. And I feel kind of obliged with people. Like, it's weird. Like, I'm not on Twitter very much. I kind of just use Twitter to like promote things that I've written.
Right.
And it's very strange to me because I mean, people act, we don't get like a nickel when you get a like. Like, you don't. If we did, I would understand kind of people's thirst for this. But I wonder if it's because I started Deadspin. I was kind of so in the early days of the internet. There's only a certain level of attention that I want. And above that is too much attention. And so I don't have that endorphin rush to like, notice me. The way that it seems to be the currency of the time now. But certainly for me, my job is and maybe I'll end up starving and broke because of this attitude. But it's certainly the only way I can do it.
Yeah. And not to cut you off, but I feel the same way. I look at things and like on Instagram, there's a lot of, golf is really popular on Instagram. There's all sorts of people posting pictures from, girls in yoga pants hitting golf balls where you can clearly see that they are not golfers. And then you get like 30, 40,000 likes on that image. And I'm thinking, just because people are liking that, it doesn't mean there's any sort of a transaction or there's no financial transaction necessarily taking place. I mean, sure, if they're sponsored by some sort of a clothing company, maybe someone's going to buy it. But hey, we're just liking that picture because, well, maybe this woman has, a nice figure, and that's about the extent of it. And then a nanosecond later, we've swiped up, and we're never going to look at that again.
It's just a bunch of series. Everything's an endorphin rush. Everything's an endorphin rush. And whatever, I get it. Like, modern life is lonely, man. Like, it's hard. We're all around our screens all the time, and we're not really talking to each other that much anymore. And for crying out loud, I don't remember the last time I saw my phone ring and didn't go, ugh, just text me, just email me. Like, we are all kind of lonely in our own ways. So I get it. We're all kind of reaching out and trying to get some sort of wide connection, but it's making us insane. And I mean, you see it obviously with this presidential election, but you see it in almost every aspect of modern life. The idea that like people that will agree with another person on 99.5% of the things in the world will murder them over that 0.5 that they don't.
Right.
And it's a bizarre. It's something that it's why it feels like, and I feel like so much of that is because we're lonely and we're thirsting for something. I know this has gotten weirdly philosophical.
Yeah, we've gone in a weird direction here, but we've gone in a weird direction. That's okay. Will, we're good. So I want to close this out because you have several different outlets where you write your articles, you have your podcast, but your movie podcast, Grierson and Leitch, or is it Leitch and Grierson?
Grierson and Leitch.
Grierson and Leitch.
I let him go first.
I understand. Well, you're a good guy. Grierson and Leitch. So best sports movies, that was one of your articles, and obviously top 50. Caddyshack and Tin Cup are in the 23 and 24 spots. So talk to me a little bit about Caddyshack and Tin Cup, how many times you've seen them. Kind of give me the thought process, if you can, about where they, I'm not sure how detailed you want to get, but where did they rank? Or, well, we know where they rank, but tell me a little bit how they got to those rankings and your thoughts when you watch those movies. Because obviously you start talking golf movies, those are the two that really come out. There's a couple other ones, Happy Gilmore, of course, but when you're sitting down making that list, how do you come to those numbers? I'm just curious your thought process.
I hosted a show for Sports Illustrated when they had their streaming channel, which was SI at the Movies. We would do like a different classic sports movie and have like a discussion of it. And I watched Caddyshack for it. Now, I should be upfront with you. I have a serious Chevy Chase aversion. You should know that. You should know that straight up. So there's a problem already I have with Caddyshack. I don't like Fletch, for example. Like Chevy Chase makes the skin on the hair on my back of my neck crawl. So keep that in mind. That is a institutional bias that we are dealing with here. But I would say that to me, Caddyshack is a series of absolutely classic, incredible, wonderful moments that will have etched their place in American popular culture that will outlive all of us. Surrounded by a lot of people sitting around desperately. It's a little bit too hangdog and ramshackle for me. It's probably the best way to put it. The best parts are so wonderful, but like when you sit down and watch the movie start to finish, I kind of feel like there's a lot of stuff that you fast forward would be the best way to put it. Tin Cup, I have to say I like Tin Cup a lot, and I've always enjoyed Tin Cup because Tin Cup to me it speaks to something inherent about not just sports but actually life, which is at a certain level, where do you make that decision of sticking true to what you truly believe and who you truly are in the face of what may necessarily not be good for you. And that's the beauty of the ending of Tin Cup. It is triumphant in failure and triumphant in stubbornness and pigheadedness. And I admire that as a stubborn and pigheaded person. I've always kind of enjoyed that about Tin Cup. And so I always liked that movie. And I always felt like that movie I feel like when it came out, it was almost a little unappreciated when it was in theaters. I feel like it's found its audience in a way. I'll put it this way. I this may be blasphemy. I would sit down and watch Tin Cup in a second right now. It would be more difficult. I would, however, sit down and watch a 10-minute YouTube clip of the best parts of Caddyshack. But I might not sit down and watch the movie all ahead straightforward.
Yep, that's very fair. Final one I want to ask you, what's most exciting you right now about sports? I mean, 2020, there's so many different things coming up as far as, we obviously just had a great Super Bowl and we're going to get into the summer golf season. You mentioned you watch golf on TV. So let's just keep it to golf since it is kind of a golf podcast, or it was until about an hour ago.
It was until I got on.
I went to, you just blew it. What are you excited? What excites you about golf? To passively watch, write about, what are you looking forward to in 2020? You got the Ryder Cup this year. I mean, I'm trying to you got the Masters coming up. I mean, give me, if someone's going to hear Will Leitch right now, what excites you about golf?
I mean, I live in Georgia, so this place shuts down on Masters weekend,
right.
in a really kind of level. I've never been, and I have to say, I'll put it this way: I've never been, but I've been offered before. Here is the best story I can tell you. Here's the best story I can tell you about how much I've changed in golf on this. My father-in-law is a member of Shinnecock.
Oh dear!
He's a member of Shinnecock. And he's a nice man, but he obviously loves golf, and he plays all the time. And he 9 years ago, he invited me to go play with him at Shinnecock. Now I told him, I said, and it's funny because my mindset in this was, as a baseball fan, if someone that did not care about baseball they said, hey, you want to go play baseball at Wrigley Field? I would hope that they would show enough respect to my game that they would turn that down, because it would be blaspheme for someone that doesn't love baseball to go be sacrosanct on the hallowed Wrigley Field. And I said, as a Cardinals fan. So I said to Roberts, I said, thank you very much for the offer. That is very kind. But I do feel like my not only terrible golf skills, but even my antipathy to the game, it would be defiling of something that so many people revere and so many people care about. So I feel like I owe it to the game that you love and the course that you play on, not to play, but thank you very much. So I thought when I got to Athens and I had all these friends that were golfers, I would tell this story and they would be like, oh man, thanks for respecting our game. What a good guy you are. You know what? You don't like golf, but we love that you appreciate golf. That is not what happened. No. They all said, you're a moron. Why didn't you play Shinnecock, you idiots? So I will say I've been offered to go to the Masters. I've been offered to play Shinnecock. I've not been offered to play Shinnecock since I've done the golf lessons. And this will be the first year that the Masters will happen since I did the column. If I get an invitation to go to the Masters, I will go. I will go this year. And look, oh wow, how magnanimous!
I was just about to
go to the Masters. Oh, I understand what you're saying, but to me, that's the golf evolution. For me, is to get excited about. I understand the context to all of this better than I did in the past, in a way that I'm excited now. I'm excited that in the same way that is fun for me when everyone fills out their tournament brackets, or everyone all sits around the television at the Super Bowl, or everyone whatever sports thing that we can all do collectively. Even now, it's something that I appreciate in golf in a way that I didn't before. So I cannot wait for the Masters this year, and I'm saying that for the first time in my life.
Well, I feel like we've accomplished a lot of things today, and we've made some progress. And phone lines are open, folks. Will Leitch will accept Masters tickets. You heard it here first. So.
I will. You know what? If you, I will deign to say sure to Masters tickets.
Twist his arm. Well, Will, this was a lightning fast episode that lasted an hour because you talk so insanely fast, but. It was great. It was great to catch up. 15 years or so after I first learned about Deadspin, and I'm talking to the founder. So it's been a lot of fun. I hope we can do it again soon. And thanks for coming by the back of the range.
Be safe. See you.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Will Leitch for joining us this week. That was a fun experiment. We may need to have him back on the podcast. So. Feel free to leave reviews in Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Remember, everything is available at thebackoftherange.com. We will see you again next week for another episode here at the Back of the Range.